She signed the papers on a Tuesday, which felt wrong somehow. Like the end of a marriage deserved at least a Friday. Vivian Okafor had picked Tuesday because that was the first appointment her lawyer could get, and because she had already taken too many days off work, and because she could not spend one more night lying awake in the master bedroom listening to the particular silence that follows a man who has stopped pretending to love you. So Tuesday it was. She sat across from her soon-to-be ex-husband's legal team in a boardroom on Bay Street, Toronto, and she pressed her pen to the page, and she did not cry. She had promised herself that much, at least. She did not cry until she was outside, standing on the sidewalk in the February cold with her coat half buttoned, and her breath making small white clouds in the air. A woman walked past, pushing a stroller. Vivian looked away. 3 years earlier, she had been the kind of woman who believed in things. She believed in hard work. She had made senior architect at 34, which her father had called improbable, and her mother had called inevitable. She believed in her marriage to Pierce Sutton, who was handsome in the particular way that boardroom men are handsome. Square jaw, good shoes, the confidence of someone who has never once doubted that the room would arrange itself around him. She had found that confidence magnetic once. Later, she would understand it for what it was, and she had believed, quietly and fiercely, in the baby she had lost at 14 weeks 2 years into their marriage, and in the possibility of trying again. Pierce had not believed in that last one. Not anymore. He had told her so the same week she miscarried, sitting at the kitchen island with his coffee, speaking in the measured tone he used for unpleasant quarterly reports. He had said he wasn't sure he wanted children after all. He had said they wanted different things. He had said a great many careful, lawyered things, and she had stood in their kitchen in her socks, on the heated floor they had chosen together, and she had understood that she was being managed out. 6 months after that conversation, she found the texts. She was not looking. That is the part people never believe, but it is true. She was looking for the charger cable she kept in his jacket pocket, because hers had frayed and she hadn't replaced it yet. She found the cable. She found the texts. She found 4 months of messages to a woman named Portia. Portia Vance, as it turned out, 26 years old, in acquisitions at Pierce's firm, the kind of effortlessly beautiful that requires an enormous amount of quiet effort. Vivian had stood in their walk-in closet reading the messages for a very long time. Then she had put his phone back exactly where she found it, plugged her own phone in with his cable, and gone to finish making dinner. She did not tell Pierce she knew. Not that night, and not the night after. She called her own lawyer first. She gathered what she needed. She took her time. This was the part she would later be most proud of, that she did not shatter, that she collected herself the way you collect evidence, carefully, thoroughly, without sentiment. When she finally told him she knew, he did not deny it. He looked, briefly, like a man who has been caught and has decided relief is the more efficient response. He said he was sorry. He said it hadn't meant anything. He said, and this was the part she would replay for years, he said, "You were so focused on the baby stuff, Vivian. You were somewhere else." She had looked at him for a long moment. "Get a lawyer," she said. "We're done." The settlement was fair, if not generous. The condo was in both their names, but she had made the down payment from her own savings, and she made sure her lawyer knew that. She kept the condo. She kept her practice. She kept the gray cat, Bernard, who had always preferred her anyway. Pierce moved into a serviced apartment in Liberty Village, and was spotted 3 weeks later at the opening of a new restaurant in Yorkville, Portia Vance on his arm, photographed by someone who knew someone who made sure Vivian's friends saw it. The photo showed Portia in a red dress, laughing at something Pierce had said. He looked pleased with himself. He always looked pleased with himself. It was one of the things Vivian had once loved. She did not fall apart. This is important. People expected her to fall apart, and she understood the expectation. She had been married for nearly 5 years, and now she was 37 and alone, and her friends had started that particular brand of concerned hovering that involves a great deal of wine and unsolicited opinions about dating apps. She was grateful for her friends. She was also very tired. What she did instead of falling apart was work. She poured herself into the Hargreaves Cultural Center project, a mid-sized commission in Hamilton that had become something more ambitious under her hands, a building that was trying, quietly, to be beautiful and functional, and to belong to the people who would use it rather than to the architect who designed it. She drove out on Saturdays. She walked the site in mud-caked boots and argued cheerfully with the project manager, and came home with a specific kind of exhaustion that felt earned. She did not, for almost 8 months, think very much about the future. She met Owen Rafferty on a Tuesday, which she would later find symmetrical. He was sitting across from her at a public consultation meeting for a proposed community library branch in Scarborough. One of those gatherings in a school gymnasium with folding chairs and a projector that kept losing signal, where the city sends a representative and the community sends opinions. Vivian was there because one of the shortlisted design firms was a former colleague's, and she was doing the collegial thing of showing up. Owen was there because he lived 3 blocks away and had thoughts about the parking situation. He did not know she was an architect until the 3rd time they spoke, which she appreciated. He had a quality she had not encountered in a while. He was genuinely interested in other people without seeming to want anything from them. He asked questions and then listened to the answers. He laughed at things that were actually funny. He was 41, she would later learn, a civil engineer who worked on infrastructure projects for the city. The unglamorous, essential work of ensuring that water goes where water should go and roads bear the weight of the things that travel over them. He was not Pierce. This was for a long time the main thing she could say about him, and she recognized that it was not fair. But he was so thoroughly not Pierce, not polished, not performing, not quietly calculating, that she found herself, over the following months, doing something that surprised her. She started to trust him. They had coffee after the consultation, then dinner, twice, and then a standing Thursday evening routine that neither of them formally proposed, which simply developed the way some things do when 2 people keep choosing each other. By spring, she had told him about the miscarriage. By early summer, he had told her about his own long story. A previous relationship, 7 years, ended badly, the particular grief of a future that didn't materialize. They were both people who had learned to live with the shape of things that hadn't worked out. It made them strangely easy with each other. She was not, she told herself, looking for anything. She was not going to rush into anything. She was going to be careful. She was also, by July, in love with him, which she did not tell him for another 2 months because she was still being careful. In October, she found out she was pregnant. She sat on the floor of her bathroom with 2 tests on the edge of the tub, Bernard investigating one of them with clinical feline interest, and she thought, oh, and then, how? And then, after a while, okay, she was 38. She and Owen had been together for 9 months, which was longer than it sounded, and also not very long at all. She stared at the ceiling for a while. She called her doctor. She did not call Owen immediately, which she would later realize was because she needed to know what she felt before she could figure out what to say. What she felt, under the shock and the logistical alarm and the complicated grief for the pregnancy she had lost before, was something she hadn't expected, a careful, steady, unreasonable joy. She called Owen that evening. She told him she had something to tell him, and she wasn't sure how he would feel. And she needed him to know that she understood if this was too much. She was trying to give him an out, which she would later recognize as the Pierce hangover, the reflex of managing other people's comfort at the expense of her own honesty. Owen was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Come over." She drove to his place in Leslieville, a narrow Victorian semi that he had half renovated himself, boxes of tiles in the hallway, a kitchen that was almost finished. He met her at the door. He looked at her face and then he pulled her in, and he held her for a long time without saying anything, and she cried in a way she had not let herself cry in a very long time. "I'm not scared," he said eventually into her hair. "I am," she said. "I know," he said, "but I'm not, so maybe that evens out." The pregnancy progressed, and with it came the revelation that things rarely proceed as planned. At 20 weeks, the ultrasound technician tilted the screen toward Vivienne and said, with the particular calm of someone accustomed to delivering surprising news, "So you're aware you're carrying twins." Vivienne was not aware of this. She lay on the table and looked at the screen and saw 2 heartbeats, 2 small, insistent presences, and she thought of the Tuesday she had signed the divorce papers and the Tuesday she had met Owen, and she thought, "I will never understand how life arranges itself." Owen, who had come to the appointment, was gripping her hand. When he finally spoke, he said very quietly, "Well, okay then." "You're not going to faint?" the technician asked. "No," he said. He looked at Vivienne. He was smiling, which was not what she had expected, and which undid something in her chest that she hadn't realized was still knotted. "No, I'm good. I'm good." She told no one about the twins except her mother and her closest friend, Adeze, for the first several weeks after. She was superstitious about it in the way you become superstitious after loss. She wanted to hold the fact of them close before the world knew. But Toronto is a city, and cities have no patience for privacy, and she worked in a profession where she was visible enough that people noticed things. Someone saw her leaving her obstetrician's office. Someone connected that to her notably altered silhouette at a professional event in November. By December, the information was circulating in the way that information about moderately public women circulates, with opinions attached. She heard through a daisy that Pierce had heard. She heard, a week after that Pierce had made a remark at some function, something dismissive, something about timing, something that made its way back to her via the intricate relays of professional social networks. She did not respond. She was very busy. She was growing 2 people and managing a major commission, and also trying to renovate a bathroom in the condo, before it became physically impossible to lift tiles, which she had perhaps misjudged. Portia Vance, she heard, had moved into Pierce's serviced apartment. There was talk of an engagement. Vivienne looked at the 2 heartbeats on the latest ultrasound image, pinned to her refrigerator. She went back to work. The twins were born on a Thursday in late March, both of them healthy, which was the only thing she had let herself ask for, at Sunnybrook Health Sciences Center, with Owen holding one of her hands and Daisy holding the other, the 2 of them coordinating in the particular way of people who have decided to be useful rather than sentimental, a girl and a boy. She had not wanted to know in advance, and so she had not known, and learning it in the moment felt like an extraordinary privilege. She named the girl Frances. She named the boy Dermot. These were family names, her grandmother's and her grandfather's, and she had decided on them before she knew Owen, back when she had still been imagining, distantly, a future she wasn't sure she'd have. Owen held Dermot in the first hour with the careful, slightly dazed expression of a man confronting something unprecedented. He looked, Vivienne thought, like someone who had been handed an important piece of infrastructure with the blueprints in a language he didn't speak yet, but who was absolutely committed to figuring it out. "Hello," he said to Dermot, very quietly, so only Dermot could hear. Or so he thought. Vivienne heard. She did not tell him that for weeks. It felt too private to say aloud, which was new for her. She had not, for most of her adult life, been the kind of woman who collected private moments and kept them carefully. She was becoming someone slightly different, she thought. That seemed fine. She had been home from the hospital for 11 days when Pierce called. She let it go to voicemail. His voice on the recording was measured, pleasant even, the voice of a man who has prepared what he wants to say. He mentioned that he had heard she'd had the babies, and he thought perhaps, in light of that, they should talk. He said something about co-parenting being something he'd been thinking about. He said he hoped she and the children were well. She listened to the voicemail while Frances slept on her chest, and Dermot slept in the bassinet that Owen had assembled incorrectly twice and correctly on the 3rd attempt. Bernard sat on the arm of the couch and observed her with amber-eyed neutrality. She called her lawyer before she called Pierce back. "He has no legal claim," her lawyer, a clear-eyed woman named Barbara, told her. "He's not on the birth certificates. The children were conceived after the divorce was finalized. He has no standing." "I know," Vivienne said. "Do you want to respond to him?" She thought about this for a while. She thought about the boardroom on Bay Street in February, and the heated floor in the kitchen, and the Tuesday she had signed the papers, and the charger cable in the jacket pocket. She thought about Frances's face and Dermot's hands and the way Owen had said hello to her son, in a voice that was not performing anything for anyone. "No," she said. "Not yet." Pierce did not go quietly. This did not surprise her. He escalated through his own lawyer, which was his right, and his lawyer sent letters with legal language that was designed to sound more substantive than it was. The claim was creative. He argued that he had been a de facto partner, that he had provided emotional support during the pregnancy, that the children's welfare required his involvement. Barbara found this interesting, in the way lawyers find things interesting when those things are without merit, but can be dealt with efficiently. But the letters came, and coming letters have a weight regardless of their legal merit. And there was a week in April when Vivienne sat at her kitchen table at 2 in the morning with Francis in the carrier, and Dermot finally asleep, and a glass of water she hadn't touched. And she let herself feel the weight of it, the audacity of it, that he could leave and find someone else and dismiss her grief over their lost pregnancy. And now that her life had somehow produced something remarkable despite everything, now he wanted in. Owen found her at the kitchen table. He had been sleeping in the spare room on nights when she had night duty, to be available but not underfoot, which was a calibration they were still figuring out. He came in and did not say anything immediately. He sat down across from her. He looked at Francis, asleep in the carrier, her small face utterly serious. "The letters again?" he said. "The letters again." He was quiet for a moment. "What do you need?" She had been asked that question before and had always answered it with logistics. "I need someone to take the car in for service. I need someone to grab groceries." She had not, in a very long time, answered it honestly. "I don't know," she said. "That's the problem. I don't know what I'm doing. I had a plan for my life and it went completely wrong, and then it went this." She gestured vaguely at Francis at the kitchen at the late hour. "This, which is better. But I'm so tired, Owen. And he's trying to take something from me, and I'm not even sure what he's trying to take anymore. I just know he doesn't deserve it." Owen nodded slowly. He reached across the table and covered her hand with his. "He doesn't deserve it," he said, "and Barbara is going to handle it. And in the meantime this," he repeated her gesture, at Francis and the kitchen and the hour, "this is yours. This is genuinely yours. He can't touch it." She looked at him for a long moment. "Don't be too reasonable," she said. "It's annoying." He laughed. She laughed. Francis stirred and subsided. Bernard came and sat on Owen's feet. The legal situation resolved itself over the following 2 months in the way that situations without merit tend to resolve. Slowly, expensively, and then all at once. Barbara filed the appropriate responses. The court reviewed what there was to review. Pierce's lawyer's creative interpretation of de facto partnership did not survive contact with a judge who had seen considerably more compelling arguments. Vivienne was not in the courtroom for the final ruling. She was at the Hargreaves Cultural Center in Hamilton, walking the completed building for the first time, with the project manager and the clients. Watching late afternoon light come through the north-facing windows, the way she had calculated it would fall across the reading room floor the way she had imagined for 2 years. The building was finished. It was beautiful. It belonged already to the people walking through it. Her phone buzzed with a message from Barbara. She read it. She stood in the reading room light for a while. Then she called Owen. "It's done," she said. She heard him exhale. "Good," he said. "That's good, Viv." "I'm standing in the building," she said. "The Hargreaves building. I'm looking at the light. Is it what you wanted?" She looked around the room, the proportions she had argued for, the materials she had fought for, the windows that made the winter light do something worth staying for. Down the hall she could hear one of the client's kids running shoes, squeaking on the polished concrete floor. "Yeah," she said. "It's what I wanted." Pierce and Portia's engagement was announced in May, a small item in a lifestyle section that a Daisy screenshot and sent to Vivienne with a series of emoji that expressed, in diminishing order, mockery, disbelief, and ultimately a kind of philosophical acceptance. Vivienne looked at the announcement. In the accompanying photo, Pierce was smiling his boardroom smile. Portia was wearing a very large ring and an expression Vivienne recognized. The slightly performed happiness of a woman who knows she is being photographed and wants to appear natural. She felt, examining her own reaction carefully, almost nothing. A faint residual ache, the way a healed fracture sometimes aches in cold weather. And then she set her phone down and went to find Owen, who was in the backyard of her condo. They had been talking about the backyard, about what to do with it, about whether a small raised bed was feasible, and he was crouched down with Dermot, showing him a beetle on a leaf with the focused attention of a man for whom beetles on leaves are genuinely interesting. Dermot was 5 months old. He could not yet appreciate the beetle. Owen was explaining it to him anyway. She stood in the doorway and watched for a moment. She had not expected this. She had not planned for this, or believed in it, or protected herself against it, because she had not known it was possible. She had thought she knew what her life would be, and she had been wrong, and the wrongness had been devastating. And then, this. Owen looked up and saw her in the doorway. "Come look at this beetle," he said. "I can see it from here," she said. "It's better up close." She went and crouched beside them, Dermot on Owen's knee, the beetle navigating its leaf with small, determined legs. Francis was napping inside. Bernard was probably on the couch. It was a Saturday in May, and the light in the backyard was the particular gold of a Canadian spring afternoon, when the warmth feels like it's been earned. She had been going to ask him about the raised bed. She had been going to mention the news about Pierce. She had been going to say any number of practical things. "Thank you," she said instead. He looked at her. He knew what she meant, or most of it. She wasn't sure she could have said the rest of it, not yet, not all at once. What it meant that he had shown up and kept showing up and had not once made her feel like a burden or a complication or a situation to be managed. She wasn't sure she had the language for it yet. She had been an architect for 15 years, and she knew how to make something that would stand. And she knew that the work was mostly done in the planning and the foundation, in the things that would be invisible once the walls went up. He had been laying something. She had been letting him. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "I know," she said. "I'm doing it anyway." The beetle reached the end of the leaf and launched itself into the air. Dermot watched the place where it had been, with the grave, delighted attention of someone for whom the whole world is still a first encounter. It was Tuesday again. She checked her phone later and realized it. And she thought that maybe Tuesdays were not so bad after all. That maybe the things that ended and the things that began on Tuesdays had a way of belonging to the same long story, if you were patient enough to read it that way. She was still learning to be patient. She had always been a person who wanted to know how things would turn out. She was learning, slowly, to trust the foundation she was standing on. To believe that something built with care and time and honest materials will hold, even when you can't see the whole shape of it yet, especially then.